Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, Brian McWilliams, where we're going to be making some jokes, laughing out at broken world, but also laying out some philosophy for the future, how we can fix this mess we're in and have a great time doing it all with a Mean Age Daydream. What's up, buttercups? It is I, Brian McWilliams. Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, your bald, beautiful host, and a couple of guests on today's show, actually. The first of which is a friend of mine, somebody that I am fond of, and I've been on his show as well, so this is a return. It's like, you know, we like to have a nice circle jerk in the Liberty world here, so this is the culmination of that. And that, of course, is David Fite. What's up, David?
Thank you so much for having me. This is, I am also a big fan of yours and have been following what you've been doing for a while, and glad to have you on when I did. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, of course. So I've got you on, by the way, for my audience. I'm also going to have Erika Kolenich on a little bit later in the show. She is running for office in West Virginia, and I think she's got a chance to make some waves in her run and her race as well. So she'll be for the second part of the show here. But before we get into that, David, it's been interesting because you had a recent debate, and it's funny, some of the people that came to our show on Lions of Liberty had come in because Mark Claire used to host a lot of debates, and Dave Smith took part in a lot of those debates, and it brought us a lot of viewers and eyeballs. And then Mark, of course, left the show. We stopped doing them, and I, frankly, am too lazy to set them up. So it's nice that people like yourself are willing to step up into that breach, because you just hosted one that was very interesting. Will you tell us a little bit about this? And this is through your Free Speech Media, which everybody should go follow. It's at Free Speech Corp on Twitter. Tell me a little bit about this genesis of this debate and what you're trying to do with Free Speech Corp.
Hell yeah. So first of all, Mark Claire's shoes are big to fill, but I'm glad to be a part of at least hosting some of these debates. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of issues that I really don't have a very strong opinion on, and so I can actually kind of be in between somewhat, this being one of them. So I did a debate on the Israel-Palestine issue between the actor Mark Pellegrino and Dave Smith, and it was interesting. I got the first DM asking me to host this debate on about October 9th of last year, right? Like, because they've been going at it online basically since October 7th. And it was basically Mark and Austin Peterson, and then like Dave Smith. And like I got so many DMs or messages or like comments about like, you guys need to have them do this debate, because I had Peterson and Smith on my show back to back 2 weeks before October 7th. So that was kind of wild to then see them going at it. So I wanted nothing to do with a debate on this issue for the longest time, because I see it as there really is no winner of a debate on this issue. Both sides think that they are so beyond right, and not just factually right, but morally right. And it's just, it's a toxic issue for the most part. But then the war has continued. The discourse online has continued and just gotten worse and worse. And I have a lot of respect for both of these gentlemen, and I don't like seeing them call each other terrible people online all day, every day, if I can help it.
Yeah. That's the thing, by the way, just to interrupt you. That's the thing that this whole Israel-Palestine thing has really brought to the forefront is, goddamn, people. I mean, they are just tearing each other apart. And it's like, Mark Pellegrino, Dave, Austin Peterson, like everybody have seen it. And by the way, I've not yet watched. I've got it in my queue to listen to is the Walter Block Dave Smith debate that also just happened on this topic. Seems like people can't get enough of this topic. But nobody walks away from this being like, okay, cool, good conversation. It's all like continuing vitriol. It's like they fight leading up to it, they fight during it, and then they continue to fight after it. No one is willing to acquiesce any point was made or give an inch of ground on it. Similar to the conflict itself. So it would seem.
Right. And I even said at the beginning, I kind of made a little bit of a joke that, my goal pardon me, my goal would be for Dave and Mark to have walked away from it respecting each other a little bit more than they walked into it. But I knew that was probably not going to happen. So what I then said was like, at least make it to where me and the audience don't walk away from this respecting either of you less. Like, please. I don't know that happened either, but because it definitely got heated, and there were some mic issues where Dave's mic won the battle for the airtime every time that
Primacy. Yeah.
was with anyone. He just had the better microphone, and so if they tried to talk over each other, it seemed like Dave had an unfair advantage, but they were interrupting each other the same amount.
It's an interesting advertisement for better mic quality. And, it's like if you're going to get into a podcasting yelling debate, you better have a good microphone.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he has the Shure SMB. Like, it's one of the best ones, and it gets in well. He was beating me for me to have actually properly moderated. I would have had to have been muting them and just being like, all right, guys, shut up. I'm talking now, which I didn't do because I'm not that type of a moderator. I'm much more of a go at it, have fun, let's see what happens. More of a hockey referee than a basketball referee,
Right. Yeah.
But it was they were going at it again and again online, and eventually I was like, all right, let's do it. Both for let's see if we can find some common ground here, and secondly, fuck it, let's get some views. Like this is clearly going to be a watch debate. People want to see it. I can make it happen. Let's do it. And both of their schedules are all over the place, so I ended up having to schedule it about 7 weeks in advance, and almost had to reschedule it, which was a problem, but figured everything out and made it happen. And it was still a lot of fun. Like I said, it was still as vitriolic as the conversation before and after. They were a little bit nicer, and I think you can hear their points better in real time in a debate like that versus trying to read through a Twitter thread with quote tweets and trying to click back and figure out what's going on. It's a lot more concise. I'd say you can definitely understand what both people truly actually believe on the topic, where reading through their online discourse, you might get lost. You can see kind of where their fundamental views come from, and philosophy then breeds into policy, and how drastically different their philosophies are, like at a core human level, which is wild, because if you look at their policies, they overlap about 90%. Mark is almost a really good libertarian, but he definitely has that. I don't want to publicly shit on him because I do still respect him, but he has that, respect for the institutions, and he's a little more patriotic, I should, than a lot of the rest of us in the liberty movement. And
it's a little bit interesting to me how often that happens, where you have somebody that's just almost there, but they can't give up on a base attachment to the institutions, as you said. Like, they believe that the patriotism that they feel is somehow inherent throughout the entire system, through all the apparatus, and that is going to be the overarching guiding factor, when we've seen it isn't. And it's frustrating when you talk to those people trying to get them over the hump, where literally nothing you can tell them seems to shake them out of it. Nothing in front of their eyes, nothing in historical context, no amount of CIA, no exposés, no amount of FBI scandals. Like, it is very frustrating. But to your point, he has been good on a lot of things for a long time. I mean, we were going to have him on years ago on Lions of Liberty, and this was before any of this Israel-Palestine recent stuff started, but he was flaky to the point where he kept committing to come on, and then he would disappear. Commit to come on, disappear. And that's why it was impressive that you were able to actually nail him down to get him to do this thing, because we just eventually on it. We're like, okay, forget it.
Yeah. The first time I had him on, it took a while of that. And some of that was on my part too, I'll say, because it was beginning of year 2, I think, of my podcast. It was still fairly early on. I wasn't super on the ball, and I was actually late for our first episode. I guess he had to schedule it super early in the morning because he was shooting for a TV show. So it was like 8 a.m. my time, and I woke up at like 8:05, and I was like, my internet crashed. Sorry, I'll be right on.
Yeah, that's it. That is the nice thing about doing these things online. You can always blame the internet, no matter what.
Right, it's great. Most of the time, it actually is my internet, but yeah, honestly, it's one of the things I'm most thankful for Twitter about is my friendship with Mark Pellegrino. Like, I was a huge Supernatural fan in my teens.
Yeah.
He was my favorite character. Like, looked up to this dude for a while. Found out he was political. Looked up to him even more. And now, like, he's somebody whose cell phone number I have and who I've hung out with in person, and
Oh, nice.
I
All right,
wouldn't
cool.
I wouldn't
I
say
didn't realize
got
that.
drinks with because he's sober, but yeah, I did an in-person debate between him and Spike Cohen about a year and a half ago that unfortunately the recording of is not great. And so it
No.
exists on the internet, but I don't encourage people to watch it because it is really trash.
Actively avoid David's content is what he's saying.
No, yeah, that one. I thought I had 3 cameras running. I had 2, and one of them stopped about halfway through, and the one that actually did record all of it was the actual like recording of what streamed. So the internet lag applied also, so it's just very bad. But it was a really fun thing to do, and I got to introduce them to each other and hang out with, it was Spike, Tasha, Mark, and me, and then Avens O'Brien and Judd Weiss just chilling.
Nice.
It was a good crowd. Like,
definitely.
Thanks to Twitter for making things like that possible.
The great facilitator, Twitter, which now, and as we talked about, briefly, I want to get back to what you're working on, and I want people to hear a little bit more about overarchingly what you have going on, because it's not just the free speech media corp, but also I like the You Are the Power movement you're working with. So we'll circle back to that. But because we're talking about Twitter, it's just been fascinating to me to see, and this just came out, like today. I think the official ban got levied in Brazil, officially banning citizens from accessing X. Of course, these people are going to go to a VPN, and the government's threatening them with an 8,900. I don't even know what standard they're on now for money, whatever, Brazilian dollars. What do they use? Pesos, Brazilian pesos. They're saying 8,900 monetary currency units that'll be levied if you use a VPN. And in the meantime, as this is going on, rampant censorship, obviously a means to control the narrative, a means to control the population, what they think, what they hear. You've got assholes like Robert Reich, who is a tiny man with a big ego and far too big of a voice, writing op-eds for like USA Today. And he's a former labor secretary. So it's not like this guy is inconsequential, arguing that we have to take down Elon Musk and we have to limit free speech. And he basically lays out what he feels is like a guidebook to do it. I mean, where do you fall right now? Like, where do you think the threat to free speech is? Where do you think these governments are going to go with it? Give me your 2-minute synopsis, and then we'll get back to what's going on in your neck of the woods.
Hell yeah, because this is one of the issues that made me an actual like anarchist and true libertarian, and not one of those people we discussed earlier who still have that attachment. Is that I'm a free speech absolutist, and I respect a lot of what Elon has done. He's kind of returned Twitter to some of its glory days, but damn, that we'd hit harder than I meant for it to. I personally think that he's somewhat of controlled opposition, not necessarily controlled opposition, but the idea that Twitter currently is some bastion of free speech where nothing actually gets censored, that everyone actually has an even playing field, that third parties are getting the same kind of treatment as the major parties, or that they're not still bought out by big business in a lot of ways, and I think is an illusion. And the fact that people are pointing at that and like that's the terrible like anarchy. It's moving the Overton window to where if that's the crazy thing, then we can't even look at what would actually be
what actual free speech
platform.
is.
Yeah.
I like that, man. I like that. I mean, you're exactly right. And I think that, I don't know, it's like a combo. Elon Musk is kind of like that way. You'd think he would be completely anarchist, right? But in a way, he also seems to be in the Mark Pellegrino camp of he can't let go of the two-party system. He does seem to echo Trump. I've tried to connect the Libertarian Party to him on Twitter by reaching out directly. I don't have to find some personal contacts to do it, but it's really aggravating to see how much power they wield, all the corruption, and then he still engages with them directly rather than look to third parties. And yes, to your point, he does, in fact, weight things. He does, in fact, still censor things. It just is the best option out there. And yeah, I don't even know, like I mean, well, you saw what happened with a true free speech messaging platform in Telegram, where I don't know, again, I don't know what Telegram does. Maybe they track down on child pornography and I don't know about it, but as far as I know, they don't do anything. And the guy's getting arrested. Pavel Durov is getting arrested in France. So to your point, if you dare to look free speech in the face, you will immediately be arrested in France getting off an airplane.
Yeah, because like I had my Twitter account suspended for, it was almost a year. It was like 2 weeks shy of a year, and that was after Elon took over. And I understand that it was kind of in the just aftermath of him taking over, where everyone was freaking out that Twitter was going to be terrible, and they ended up kind of overcorrecting and really cracking down. But I got into it in a thread with some people about there was a case where someone shot at a police officer who was trying to arrest him, and again, as an anarchist and to the extreme in a lot of ways, I normally think that self-defense from an unjustified traffic stop is based, and so I expressed that, and I got suspended for praising violent behavior or whatever, which yeah, borderline. I'll kind of give it to him. I kind of did a little bit.
Well, I mean,
so did everybody else in that thread who was like, it's a good thing the dude ended up getting shot by cops in the end.
Right. Well, I mean, there's always going to be a massive amount of, and this is the problem with any of this stuff. There's also going to be a massive amount of subjectivity in anything you define as eliciting violence and supporting violence and doing whatever, which is why we simply can't allow anybody to dictate those terms to us from a governmental perspective. Right. And that's, I mean, X, as we've said before many times, I'm sure you've said it, I've said it, the X at least does seem to be as much influence as I'm sure governments have behind the scenes. At least they stand up somewhat to the corporations and somewhat to the big government influences. Whereas Facebook, we saw from Zuckerberg, just 100% complicit, listening directly to what they're being told to censor. At least X on the surface seems to reject that. So that is something. And, that's why these governments are freaking out. But anyway, sorry. Let's get back to the main point of this interview. Now that we've talked about that. So tell me a little bit more about what's going on with You Are the Power and that project, because that would look pretty interesting to me. It's a nonprofit organization. So what's going on with that? What's the goal? Why'd you create it? And what are you guys working on?
So I didn't create it. I can't quite take credit for that.
I didn't mean create it. Yeah. You're working with it though. Yeah.
But yeah. So it was Spike Cohen is the founder and president, and so it is kind of a weaponization of the community that he built through his VP race, and then kind of continuing to go around and do bits of public speaking and kind of helping people in various communities and speaking out against government overstep. And we kind of turned it into an actual machine to do this at a larger scale. And so, to put it simply, we either cyberbully or sometimes in person bully government officials into not being as terrible as they normally are. So, like, a really good example that just happened about a week ago now. One of our members in Arizona was arrested at a city council meeting for supposedly violating a city ordinance against attacking any government employee personally in the public time at the city council meeting, which already is just a ridiculous ordinance to have in a violation of free speech, as we're talking about.
So actually, and completely subjective. What is attacking in that courtroom, in that hall hearing? What is your definition of attacking? It's exactly what they want it to be, to shut you up.
Mm-hmm. And she wasn't being vulgar or rude. She was directly attacking their political career, like, their actions as the mayor, and was arrested and like forcefully removed from the city council meeting. Fire is already involved with suing the city to get the ordinance removed. And she's now involved in, well, she has criminal charges pending against her for violating this thing. And now she has a civil suit back against them. And we as an organization are, sharing the story, trying to get public support behind her. I don't know if we're going to like send Spike down there to do anything, or if anyone's going to be super actively involved with that one. We're talking to the lawyers and making sure that, we don't mess up her chances to get out
Right.
of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
criminal charges. That's priority number one. And then we can believe the government afterwards, right?
Like,
But that's just the kind of stuff that we've been doing all over the country, is finding these people who, in Georgia, we're working with almost a dozen families now whose kids have been taken from them by
that's
like
yeah.
it, which is wild. Like, this is like a reoccurring theme that we're seeing, especially in the state of Georgia, and we're finding out that it's happening in other states as well, where people are kids with certain types of disabilities or illnesses where they are prone to maybe bruising or things like that, with diagnoses, the parents are getting accused of abuse because, oh, your kid has a bruise, it's abuse. Kids are getting taken. The county that takes them is getting like gigantic checks from the state gets a gigantic check from the federal government. And like, as we've dug more and more into this is like, one of those like conspiracy theory rabbit holes almost, is how many people and organizations are in on this. But we've actually had some amount of success, like kind of in the court, the individual court levels, kind of lobbying various like judges and whatnot, like, about this, and just providing support to the families where we can, and making sure that there's eyes and ears on it, and these things are just getting swept under the rug, because we're looking at hundreds of people with criminal records and their kids taken from them, all because they tried to seek out the medical like help that their children needed and made the mistake of taking them to the wrong doctor.
Yeah, it's despicable. I think that was the one I was thinking about mentioning myself. So I'm glad you brought it up, because that's what I think we even had echoed from the Libertarian Party platform too, because it's a perfect example of just the rot in the system. And as you mentioned, it's like we see in so many different industries, like even like the drug war. I was talking to a buddy of mine who is, let's say, involved in the illicit market, and he was telling me just, how many people, that everything's arranged, everything's coordinated, everything's got fall people for this, that, and the other. But you think about how many people benefit from the existence of the drug war, how much money is there. And it's the same thing, you could call it probably the child welfare industrial complex. I mean, in Los Angeles, I work with an organization called CASA, which is court appointed special advocates. And that's all about foster care and advocating for these kids. But the system is massive. I mean, it's, between lawyers, between organizations, halfway houses, the doctors, like you're talking about, I almost, is it a feature or a bug type of thing? And like you're finding out with this, and it's awesome to hear that, this kind of work's being done. It is clearly a feature of the system that keeps people employed and keeps those checks rolling. And these people, most often and more often than not, these parents that are getting their kids taken away don't have the power. They don't have the resources to fight it. You are the power. There you go.
Yeah.
You guys are the power for these people. They don't have the resources to fight it, to hire lawyers and do all this stuff to get their kids back. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, we've got two families I know of this month in Georgia that have hearings coming up. I think, the Sullivans have two hearings on the 9th and 10th, and then the Whiting Clark family later in the month. And both of those hearings are literally, if that doesn't go their way, their parental rights are being terminated, and they will probably never see their kids again. All because, again, they made the mistake of going to the wrong doctor. So yeah, guys, definitely check out. It's YATP official on Twitter. Read up on all of the social media posts about these things. Help us share it. If there's a call to action somewhere on that Twitter thread, make sure you click it, or go sign up and be a member so you can get these emailed to you, because it's been really fun and also heartbreaking at the same time to see how much corruption there is going on and all of these local governments across the country, but also we have racked up a number of wins in 2.5 years of really doing this, and some of them have been very quick. Just basically the threat of, either you stop harassing this nonprofit and let them feed homeless people, or next city council meeting, we show up with Spike and Kennedy from Fox News and we do a
Yeah.
whole thing about it. Like, those are your options. Do you want your political
Right.
career ruined or not? And which is how the representative republic democracy thing is really supposed to work, right? We need that wing of the kind of media activist group that actually makes sure that people know what they're voting for when they go into the voting booth. And that's kind of, we're not a political group, but that is kind of, the end result of this work is like, you will not win re-election when we're done with you.
Yeah.
And we've made
I mean,
sure of that a couple of times.
That's what these people care about. Yeah, that's at the end of the day. That's what these fucking people care about. So screw them. Good. And so one more thing you're working on too. I mean, this is obviously nonprofit. I've always been a big fan, and it gives me a lot of inspiration. I'm sure other people too. When you see libertarians doing good work, especially with like nonprofit organizations, and there's one more that you're working with too, which is the Mobility Independence Foundation, and that is pretty new. I mean, 2022, which is, you're in baby years here, but tell me a little bit more about the work you're doing with that.
So that one was founded by a great activist from here in New York, Thomas Queter, who is he's been in a wheelchair pretty much his entire life. He has a disease that basically brittle bones disease, as well as a couple of other things that make it to where he needs one to get around even his house. And over the course of his life, he's come into a lot of issues with the system, the way that it's built to get people these wheelchairs. And at one point in time, spent almost 5 years stuck in his apartment, unable to leave because he couldn't get a wheelchair that could actually get him out of the house. And he basically decided, because he's a good, upstanding libertarian, he just basically said, fuck the system. I am going to pull together the community that I have and the resources that I have and build myself a wheelchair that's going to work. And so it basically started out as like a pet project of some friends making like a better and better and better wheelchair. And now it is a full-fledged nonprofit that is an open source mobility wheelchair design nonprofit. So the idea is that as we figure out these ways to make it better for the people using it, we're sharing those designs with anybody and everybody so that they can go out and have it built themselves. If they figure out ideas to make it better, it's all a communal thing that's just making it all better. And it is a very simple modular system at its base so that it can be modified and adapted. It's not from some for-profit company with all of these patents and rights, and you can't repair it without it being from a licensed repair shop and all of these other regulations. It's a true free market kind of fend for yourself system. And then we're also, building the network of these repair shops and hobby shops and maker spaces and things like that can actually do the work. And there's so many of these shops sitting where there's just a bunch of 45-year-old dudes that go there to escape their wife and kids for a couple of hours, hang out and drink beers and tinker with their 3D printers or whatever. Like, that would love the idea of, hey, do this. It'll take you guys a week. We're a nonprofit in the process of raising the money. So the end goal would be, we'll give you the money for the parts and everything. Build this for somebody in your area that needs it. And they get to, really feel good about themselves. And so it's kind of like a win-win all around. And so far, we've been able to raise a decent amount of money and get around the country and start actually growing this network fairly well. And we're about to actually put the green light on the actual designs themselves once we're done testing them all, because Queter likes to be the crash test dummy and make sure that everything's actually safe, right? We're not trying to kill people.
Yeah.
But
I imagine so.
But yeah, we pulled like the suspension system out of kind of a combo between an 18-wheeler and an ATV. We have dirt bike tires on it. The battery that is in it currently is from like the industrial solar farm industry.
Okay.
So it lasts for about 3.5 days of like actual use between charges and takes only about 6 hours to charge versus about a 12-hour battery that took 8 hours to charge, which is what was in his wheelchair. Just some life-changing like improvements to his life that we're now trying to be able to make sure that everybody can have access to.
I can't wait for you to walk out one day to test the wheelchair, and you've got a bunch of thugs from the big wheelchair companies waiting to just beat the shit out of you, or the government. You know, I always say, like, the government's just right there, like your unsanctioned wheelchair charity. They just come in with pipes and start bashing the wheelchair.
It has
So
been kind
hopefully
of fun because I was just in Houston at a Abilities Expo. So we had a table at this, big expo center with a bunch of these other, for-profit companies, and the difference in the pitches was extreme. That's for sure. But the reaction from the actual attendees of like, oh yeah, this is what I needed. I'm never going to be able to afford one of those. Insurance will never pay for one. I don't have the money. I'm disabled. There were some of the people that were riding around in, these really nice, $20,000, $40,000, $50,000 wheelchairs, but that's not something that the average person can get. And insurance only pays for one every 5 years typically. And that includes even as kids. So you're talking a 3-year-old gets a wheelchair and then he's 8 before he gets a new one.
Oh, God.
Which is, that doesn't work. But so the great part about being a nonprofit, though, is that at no point in time are we actually selling these things. So we're not breaking any regulations. There's no regulatory system on releasing free designs to the world. We don't actually have to interact with the government on that side of things. We just have to interact with the IRS on we're a nonprofit and we get fucked up the ass side of things.
Well, yeah. They'd love to do that. And of course, the Democrats love adding more and more IRS agents. All right. Well, that's awesome. Well, I'll include, that's themif.org, almost themilf.org. Don't type that in, go somewhere else. But I'll include that in the show links. Yeah, I'm sure. But dude, I'll include all the links to the stuff, the 3 orgs, to your show, your podcast, your debate forum series, to Spike's organization and to this one. It's just awesome, man. It's awesome, just catching up with you in general. So we got to do it more often. It's on me. I always say, I'm like, oh, we got to do this. And then I always forget, but we'll do it. We'll do it more often. It's always a fun man to chat with. So
thanks for having me on. And I will say,
people
real
find
quick,
you individually, by the way. Tell me, go ahead. Say whatever, where people can find you, all that good stuff.
So at David Fite on Twitter, or at Fight for Liberty if you're looking for the show, or like you said, at Free Speech Corp if you're looking for the network.
FITE, by the way, goes.
Yeah, FITE. And I will just say the last interview that I did for Fight for Liberty, my main show, was Erika Kolenich. So I'm going to shout her out because she's also my number one, the person I'm watching the most. It's her, Michael White, and Don Rainwater. Those 3 campaigns, I think, actually have a shot of doing some really cool things this year in a party where that's not always the case. So yeah,
that's
Erika is super awesome, well qualified.
Perfect segue. Coming
gotta
up.
Shout her out. There you go.
Well, she'll be finishing up this episode. That's perfect. All right, man. Well, good having you on, my brother. I will talk to you later. And for those of you, hang on. I'm going to end this, and then we'll pop right in with Erika momentarily. So, David, say goodbye to the lovely people.
Goodbye, lovely people.
All right. So as I mentioned at the top of the show, I do want to do a little bit more talking to candidates, especially those that are going to make an impact when it comes to maybe pushing past that threshold, that resistance threshold of 3%. We're so close to getting by it. And I am joined today by Erika Kolenich. I did it again.
It's okay. My husband and I almost getting married before I could pronounce it, so you're good.
Okay, I think I got it that time. Kolenich. All right, Erika Kolenich. I'm not going to start it over. We're just going to power through. And what's great having you on here, and I'm glad to be connected with you, is you're in an interesting circumstance in West Virginia where you're a second-time candidate, correct? You ran in 2020,
correct.
And and as I said, I think you hit that 3% threshold, but this time around, you're getting more momentum. You're getting more opportunity. We've seen this in media coverage. And tell me a little bit about the circumstances that you find yourselves in this time around, where you think that this may be a time to make a bigger splash.
Sure. Yeah, it's really exciting. We're having a great time in West Virginia, and what we're telling folks is we're ready to relegate the Democrats to third party status here in West Virginia. So we're really excited. the situation that we have in West Virginia is that Republican registrations are going up, but the great thing is that non-party affiliations, third-party affiliation registrations are going up as well. And what we saw in 2020 is that the Republican gubernatorial candidate blew the Democratic gubernatorial candidate out of the water by almost double. It was a 63% victory on the Republican side to a 30% on the Democrat side. And since then, we've seen that the Democratic registrations have fallen, and the non-party independent libertarian registrations are growing. And they're actually growing at a higher rate than the Republican registrations in West Virginia, which we're really excited about. And what we have happening in West Virginia is that the Democratic nominee for governor isn't really running an election. And I don't say that lightly. He's not running an election. He's not fundraising. He's not doing events. He's barely coming out of his hometown. He's not speaking about issues that are important to his demographic and his following.
I mean, in his defense, that's what Joe Biden won on last election cycle. So, I mean, there might be a playbook.
Fair enough. But he's actually isolating his base in West Virginia. We're out there and we're talking to people, and literally when they say, who are you running against? And I say the gentleman's name, the response I get is, who is that? So he's not as well funded. The Democratic nominee in 2020 was well funded. He was well known. He's a plaintiff's trial lawyer who had a decent name throughout the state. And this guy just doesn't have it. So we really see a chance to surpass the Democratic candidate in West Virginia. And the great thing is, our Republican candidate in West Virginia, not super well liked either. So we really have a chance to pick up votes there. He's not a West Virginian. And if you know anything about West Virginia people, we like West Virginia people. We like people that were raised here, that understand our values. And, the common sentiment about this guy's name's Patrick Morrisey, he's the current attorney general, is that he's a carpetbagger. He moved into West Virginia because he couldn't get elected anywhere else. So we're really feeling a lot of momentum. As a libertarian, you're out there running. Sometimes you can get a little bit beat down, but I can literally count on two hands the amount of people who have said nasty or rude things to me, or who haven't been willing to have a conversation with me, which is amazing.
Yeah, that is. I mean, so as somebody that went door to door for Ron Paul, back in 08, I know what you're talking about when you say that people, some people can be nasty, but when you hit on something, when people actually have a message that resonates, and, Ron Paul did in the day, even here in Los Angeles, where it's just rife with progressives, a lot of people would say, I actually like what he has to say, but they weren't willing to change their registration to Republican. They weren't willing to give him a chance because he wouldn't win. But what you're talking about sounds like, well, let me ask you this. The people you're talking to, are the Democrats there? Are they sticking to their guns Democrat, or is that where you're seeing more of the migration? You think it's migrating from Democrat to independent, or from Republican to independent? At what pace? What do you feel? What's your feeling on that?
There's definitely a migration from Democrat to independent, but you're also seeing a migration from Republican to independent, because what people are mad about in West Virginia is that the Republican Party's become watered down. Everybody's throwing an R in front of their name to become elected. And you're really seeing in West Virginia a struggle between, the Chamber of Commerce Republicans and the kind of the culture war Republicans. And there's a real battle, and people are getting frustrated with the Republican Party, and they're going to an independent or non-party status as well. But it's mainly happening from the Democratic side, no question. I mean, probably at a 2-to-1 ratio.
That's fascinating. So what do you think's driving that? Like, what are the main issues? What are the conditions that you're talking to people on? Like, when you're connecting with Democrats, especially there, what are the topics where they're like, you know what, you're making sense, and my party's just let me down, or I don't believe that our governor is going to let us down, or take us forward in the proper fashion?
It's really having the DC driven values of the Democratic Party coming into West Virginia, and that not meeting West Virginia values. So as the Democratic Party has moved further and further left, that's not where West Virginia lives. You hear a lot of talk about, transgender folks in bathrooms. You hear a lot of talk about, men and girls sports. And then you just really hear a lot of talk, and this is where it really comes in, about the economy, about, West Virginia kind of abandoning coal, because a lot of Democrats in West Virginia came from union families, coal miner backgrounds, and they really feel like their party has left them behind as they've started to focus on green energy.
Yep.
And that's where you see a lot of the concern. And then, a lot of people, Brian, just can't even articulate it. They just know that whatever it is that's happening in Charleston, which is our capital, with their party, isn't them. They just don't feel represented anymore. And they can't even tell you why. They just know that they don't feel it.
I feel that's a overarching sentiment throughout, on a national level. And I think you're seeing that, as you mentioned, in your polling and the way people are identifying. We're seeing that in national polling. I talked about that from the Libertarian national perspective, is people are hungering for a third option. And it's, like you said, it's not something anybody can particularly voice. There's certain touch point issues, as you mentioned, energy, protecting children's rights, but it does seem to be a movement in that direction. So tell me a little bit more about what you need to succeed. What, if you had to say, how can people help? Where are the goals? What particularly do you think is going to help move the bar here and push people over the level? What do you need to compete?
We need money, right? It
Yep.
always comes down to money, particularly in such a rural state like West Virginia. Going door to door is hard. You might be out there, knocking doors for 4.5 hours, and you're only going to cover, a tenth of what you would in the city knocking doors.
That's a really good point. Yeah.
So we have to have money, because we're going to reach folks through, TV, radio, and we have to have volunteers, like literally just boots on the ground, because when we are meeting people where they are, sometimes it's door to door, but most often, it's at fairs and festivals. Like there's just a group of us, and we go to the state fair, and we might have a booth, but we're not necessarily standing at that booth. We're literally just walking around the fair, and somebody's there eating their corn dog, and we're saying, "Hi, how are you? Do you know about the Libertarian Party and a third option you're going to have? Are you frustrated about politics? Let me talk to you," and hand you a card. And it's just having those face-to-face conversations and meeting people that way. And so we need bodies, and we need money.
All right. Well, tell me, so let's
really what it comes down to.
And I will post the links to your site so that people can find you, donate, and volunteer. Let's talk a little bit about your background. What brought you to libertarianism? Why did you want to run? What caused it? I know you've got a legal degree, and you have been in lawyering out there, so that might have played a part. I find a lot of people that come around to it, it's because frustrations with the legal system. But yeah, let's hear a little bit more of your story so people can kind of jive with, the inspirational factor of why they need to get out and help.
Yeah, I love helping people. I mean, that's why I'm a lawyer. I represent, West Virginia individuals, not businesses, not corporations, just real West Virginia people getting abused by the system. I represent parents in abuse and neglect proceedings whose children are being taken by the government, not because they're bad parents, but because they ticked off the wrong government official. And that was always burning inside of me, but I didn't necessarily equate that with libertarianism. And I was one of those people who always just put my head in the sand when it comes to politics. Like, don't talk to me about it. It doesn't affect me. I don't know anything about it. And my husband is libertarian. I always say he was libertarian when he came out of the womb. And he just started getting involved with the party and helping people with campaigns. And then I'm a people person, and I like to help. So I started helping with campaigns. And before I knew it, I just got swept up in this idea of liberty. And I'm like, wait a second, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. This is the answer. I've been trying to help people one by one, a case at a time, a case at a time, a case at a time. But the real answer I've been looking for, the real hill that I'm trying to climb is liberty. And that's what I need to be doing. And I just felt called. And the biggest and best way that I thought to do that and to use my voice and to spread it throughout the entire state and get that message out there was the governor's race, because it's clearly the most visual one, the one that you can make the most impact.
Yeah, I agree there. It's interesting. I've had the California Libertarians approach me about possibly doing a run myself for governor in the future. My kids are too little. I know you've also got a daughter, I believe, right?
Yeah.
And how old's your daughter now?
She's 23.
Okay, so she's out and doing her thing. Yeah, I'll say like I thought about it. And I'm like, God, it's gonna be a lift. And I don't know if my kids are 4 and 2, so maybe in a few years.
Yeah, you can do it when they're old enough to, travel around with you, and it's fun for them.
Yeah, and they can loudly disavow me if they have to their friends and social medias, as is popular these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that's a fantastic tactic, though. And, even that's always our struggle, right? It's how to get the message out effectively and get platforms. And as I mentioned, it is great that you are getting media coverage for this. You were invited to the West Virginia, was it the Media Association luncheon?
It was their press conference, which was shocking to me. I was just, I was being interviewed by a reporter who happened to be on their board. And at the end of the conversation, he said, "Hey, what are you doing Friday night?" And it was really shocking to me. And, historically, libertarians in West Virginia, we don't get invited to do those things. And he just said, "I think you're a great person. You seem really sincere, and I identify with your story. And I just really want to go to bat for you." And he, was clear up front. "I can't make any promises. I don't know what I can do." But I got a call about 15 minutes later, and it was a great experience. I got, afterwards, so many people came up to me, and, people say one thing, whether or not they'll act in a certain way, but everybody indicated to me that they felt that they identified with me, my story, and what I could do for West Virginia far more than the other two candidates. So it was really great.
Yeah, I mean, and connecting with people, it is hard. Working with the media especially is very difficult because they are, unbelievably biased to the left, for the most part anyway. And of course, regionally it changes a bit, but having an authentic story is vital, and having a perspective, I think. And I can tell that I can tell just by talking to you, you're a good communicator. Probably also has to do with the being a lawyer, because you have to have good communicative skills in order to win over juries, or judges. But I think that there's something to be said for also coming across and hitting people where they're at. And so many times, I think a lot of libertarian candidates don't speak to the issues that directly impact people. And unless you're kind of forced to get into a race like this, where you're a governor and you're saying, where are the pain points? That gets overlooked in so many ways. And in the way we overarchingly communicate as a party tends to be a little bit too threatening, and not enough compassion, not enough solutions, and how we're going to help make your lives better. And I think you're really doing a good job of expressing why that would be vital to your constituents were you to be governor.
Yeah, thank you. And, I think it does sometimes, it is hard, because I definitely want to go out there and carry around my freedom and my liberty stick and just beat people with it. But you're right. Freedom and liberty is scary to people. And, even in West Virginia, where our motto is "Mountaineers are always free," I walked around in 2020 with that slogan, and I talked about it all the time. That's not necessarily what people want to hear.
No.
Sometimes you have to talk to them about the issue that's affecting them and explain to them why liberty is the solution to their problem. And it slowly starts to open their eyes to other things. If you're talking to people in a town that's overrun, in West Virginia by homelessness and opioid addiction, and you say, "Yeah, the libertarian platform is, do bodily autonomy, do what you want, make your own decisions," that's a hard sell.
Yeah.
Right. So you really have to start saying, so what problems do you face? Well, the problems I face are, I don't, my taxes are too high. Okay, let's start with that and then move over here. So it really is, you really do have to come at it from a point of compassion, from what every individual voter's problem is, and start the conversation about libertarian solutions and ease them into it.
Yeah, exactly right. It's you have to do a lot more listening, and I think that going door to door, you really learn that in part of your campaigning. So that's awesome to hear. That's really valuable advice, I think, to a lot of the people that are listening that might be running campaigns right now too. So I really appreciate it. What else? Is there anything else past what we talked about that you want to hit on as we're discussing this? And then, of course, I want you to tell everybody where they can go. Again, I will put show notes in, but it's always good to hear it as well. Get that stick in people's minds.
Well, what I think is important for me is just, what I said, that one of the most valuable things that I have found on the campaign is that everybody has a story. And in West Virginia, where our largest employer is the government and the state of West Virginia, and one of my most passionate things is school choice. It's like, my top 3. So I'm going around and I run into a lot of teachers and they say, how do you feel about school choice? And I say, well, I love school choice, but there's going to be a public education system. So let's, because on day one, I can't eliminate public education. So you really just have to listen to them unload. And then what you realize is once you listen to them, you can bring them around to, so what you don't like is the State Department of Education. Let's burn that down together. And then they're like, oh, you don't like the State Department of Education either. They tell me what to do. And
beautiful.
So I think so many libertarians, when they're running these campaigns, they want to get in the face of the public teachers and they want to say, you should go to work at the charter school. You shouldn't have a job. We want to eliminate public education. But they're not going to hear you that way. And they're certainly not going to come to the libertarian movement that way. So, you really have to find a way to meet people where they are, start talking about their concerns. And they're always, always, always going to give you an opportunity to propose to them a libertarian solution that they love, because we're right about this stuff.
Yeah.
You just have to wait for them to open the door for you to walk through, then grab their hand and, take them through the door with you.
Amen. So. Beautifully said. All right. So tell everybody, where can they go to find you, support you, chat with you, etc.?
Well, my website is nowisthetimewv.com. On that website, you can submit a website submission form that comes into my email. You can donate there, which I would love, even $5. I know sometimes people feel weird about $5. $5 goes a long way in my campaign in West Virginia. I'm also on Facebook, X, Instagram, all the things. And if people have a hard time remembering my name, I know it's a hard one. My husband's parents are from the Czech Republic. If you just type in Google Erika for governor of West Virginia, all of the things will come up and you'll figure out how to get in touch with me.
There we go. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Erika Kolenich. I had a great time talking to you. I really, really hope that people will go support what you're doing, and I will watch your race with some excitement. And as we discussed earlier, I look forward to chatting with you a little bit more on the Libertarian National side of things, and we'll make sure to make that happen.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on.
Of course. All right. Thanks, everybody. I will talk to you a little bit later.